Okay, what is up, everybody? What is up, traders? I'm filming this on May 2nd. April is over, it's in the past, and of course, this is the monthly recap. Just jump right in and get started. I would call this month for me a stepping stone month, and I don't say that with any hindrance on the fact that I did pull out 65 grand this month, which is, again, real world money. That's amazing. That's like the average income for the average person in America. So to pull that out in what I would call a stepping stone month is incredible. Very grateful for that. It's such an awesome feeling that I've cultivated the skill to still what I call I guess not as eventful of a month to still pull out this kind of a profit. So it's really really cool, really really awesome. But I call it that. I call it a stepping stone month because there just wasn't anything exciting. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Every month can't be exciting. We just experienced probably the hottest, most exciting market we've seen in decades. At least what people who have traded decades have been saying that. We saw, in January and February. So it's only makes sense. Like you're gonna have great months. You're gonna have bad months. You're gonna have pretty boring months. You're gonna have lame months. Like any kind of month you can have in this world, in this environment, and in this place we call the market. So yes, nothing really eventful. Just from reviewing my month, this will be a shorter recap, but that's okay. There's still good lessons to take from it. So let's just jump right in. Week one really was my best. Well, it was my best week, but it really, again, wasn't because I did a lot. It actually did quite less. I was in Dubai with Tim and Huddy this week, so it was really really awesome to pull out a month like or a week like this in well essentially kind of I wouldn't say on vacation mode because I did end up taking a trade every day. Even though I mean, like this day I showed up for 5 minutes, I pretty much had to just sell a trade that I had a stop loss on. So other than that, I really didn't stay by the market all day. It was maybe 1, 2 hours tops, first hour, last hour. So to come out with my best week of the month was pretty sweet, and it was really only due to two plays, which was if we go back here to the beginning, which was CNC or CNNC and FPWM. Now, both of these are the same setup, which is kind of shorting a promotion, shorting what some people call a pump and dump. And if I'm not going to get too in detail because I kind of knowing I was going to take these trades very much in the future. My very first video lesson or YouTube video ever is on this pattern, how I trade it, how I manage it. So I will link that here. You might see it pop up on the screen. Watch that video has how I do it. But essentially, with CNCC, I got short around like the 10-11 range. Went as high as about 1450, which is totally fine. That was within my plan. And the mother of all dumps came, and I was really really patient with this, only because I wasn't patient with FPWM, which I'll go over next. But I covered. I mean, again, I had like a 10-11 average covered down in I believe the low threes for I forget how much I made, but again I think I was most of this day, so like 13ish grand or so. Whereas if we go to FPDM, I actually covered pretty early, not early because I had a great gain because I was short from the mid sevens, went as high as 10, covered I believe in the mid to low threes. Although I did miss the second red day, I went down to the twos, and that's exactly why I held CNCC for a second day because I saw FPDM do it and I already had covered. So I'm like, okay, let's be more patient with CNCC, and that paid off. But FPDM was again probably this day around close to 19 grand. So those two trades pretty much made my week. If I didn't have those trades, it wouldn't have been such a great week. But then again, that's how any trade goes. If you don't take a good trade, like that's your week doesn't turn out the same. So um, again, watch the YouTube video that I linked. That tells me how I go over it a little more in detail. That I don't really feel like I need to go over this video. But again, two great promotion plays resulted in two of my best trades I would say for the month that really create my best week. Jumping into the second week, not much eventful except for this day on the 14th, my second biggest red day of the month, but really was the day of my biggest loss of the month. And because as you can see here, it's just under about 18K, around $17,700, and that was on ENZC. And actually, before I get into ENZC, let's go over how I started my day off on the 14th. And it actually started off really really good. BBKCF is a crypto exchange. Really started running back in kind of when Bitcoin broke. Actually, Bitcoin broke out I believe actually later, but when the crypto started getting hot, I should say, this thing started uptrending from 40 cents and was kind of running up now from $2 all the way up to $4 in the anticipation of the Coinbase IPO, which was this top day here on the 14th. It created a great red day that I took advantage of. At least took about half the move. If we go into the intraday now, not only this company, but a lot of other companies that were crypto related, crypto exchange related, were running up big into Coinbase's IPO. I had a feeling it was going to be a sell the news event, and so is exactly what happened. I believe I actually have my trades here on this one. Is this it? Yeah, this is it. So right out the open, we panic hard red, and remember, if you go to the daily chart here, it had been a few days since we had gone red. Been about like a day and a half, maybe almost 2 days now that we'd respected red green. And considering how extended we were, and again into the IPO of Coinbase, I was very eager in thinking that it was going to have a red day. So I was very aggressive out the open, thinking that was what's going to happen, and it did. So back to the charts, or the entries, shorted again right out the open right before it went red, covered into this panic, dip bought this at a different account, flipped it into this bounce, reshorted the bounce, and then covered again. So, within the first 30 minutes of the open, 30 minutes to an hour, I was just felt on fire, right? Just short, long, short. And I think I actually longed it one more small time here too. So between all those trades, I was up like 13 grand within the first hour or so, which was just an awesome feeling. Now, I didn't capture any of this because by the time the Coinbase IPO came around, was around this time, and I kind of psyched myself out thinking that this was the sell the news event. So I kind of just didn't really focus too hard on the Coinbase IPO when it actually happened. And then all of a sudden I see the Coinbase stock, like the stock Coinbase, starts selling off really hard. And then I look at BBKCF and it's already down to like the low threes. So I'm thinking like, man, I should have got short in close to the mid threes. I don't want to chase now. In hindsight, getting short in the low threes was not that bad of an idea, considering it then went down to the low twos. So a whole $1 a share downside, even though I thought it was chasing. Not a big deal. Still was pretty happy with my afternoon, but unfortunately came along ENZC. Now ENZC has been a great runner when the market was hot back in January and February, and even on the backside some of these days it offered some really great dip buys, some really great first green days. So I had known the ticker as a ticker that I made a lot of money on the long side from. Coming into, I believe it was right the 14th, obviously, but on this big red day, I just got way too aggressive and way too undisciplined and meticulous about the trade in general, which was a panic dip buy. So I pull it up, it's panicking, right? And like I said, all previously through that run and backside, I had probably dip bought this stock 20, 30 times and made a lot of money doing it. So when I see this panic, I'm thinking, great, like round 37, whatever time try it is on me or for this stock, like let's dip buy this thing again. I dip buy it around 15 here. You see the first green candle turned out to be a fake out. I was able to cut it there. Okay, first loss, no big deal. I then start buying again. I'm like, okay, second bottom, right? Let's buy it again. Eventually, it's going to bounce, right? Because just again from just previous history of me learning how the stock usually bounces incredibly well. Buy it. It has a little double bottom. I'm like, okay, great. Here comes the bounce. It doesn't, and this really catches me off guard. So I tried selling some, didn't get filled nearly as much as I wanted, and unfortunately, here come in the bad habits. I'm thinking, okay, it's panicking even more. Like let's not get caught in the panic. Let's again, my position side was still manageable. Let's do it again. Let's buy more. Buy it again here. And during this time, I'm then thinking, right, when it's not bouncing, right, for a third attempt now, I'm trying to buy it. It's not bouncing like it should. And what I should have done before I even made the first dip buy here, before I even bought any shares at all, I should have found out why it was panicking. And essentially, what was told to me, I didn't find the news myself. What was told to me is that they had a conference, and the CEO pretty much said some negative things, saying like they're pretty much far away from actually producing the business they want to produce. Like at least a year out, their production or whatever their sell or the company they want to build is behind. Right? It's not going to happen for a while, and so that's legitimate reason as to why this kept panicking. So if I had known that, I just wish I knew that earlier, because it probably could have prevented me from dip buying this at all, and so once we get to that moment, and once I find that out, I'm pretty much realizing reality setting in for me that this might not actually bounce, right? This could just keep going lower. And so at that point I said, okay, like we're not going to pull an MMEDF situation or an MMNFF situation. Like if you saw that video, I'll link that as well. That was my biggest loss on the similar play of a dip buy that just did not bounce. So I realized, yeah, Kyle, you got to get out. Like, we're not going to do this again. This is not going to happen. And so I just eat the whole loss down here in the low 11s. And ironically, that is the bottom. And then we actually bounce almost 2 cents a share. So again, still way lower than had I my first two attempts. So it still would have been a loss, but just very frustrating that the eventual bounce that I thought was coming, I sold the bottom, like the dead bottom here. So all in all, after the first attempt, second attempt, and with huge slippage, and then a third attempt with even more size than all the other previous attempts combined, I ended up losing just under 18 grand. Uh, and again, I've talked about this on the Twist episode where I actually go over this play as well. I just get it's something I have to watch going forward. Where I get into this this mindset of like, I don't care about the loss anymore. Like, I know I'm going to take a loss. Let's just keep trying. And that's just such a wrong way to go about it, right? If I had just stopped it after this first attempt or this attempt and just said, you know what, screw it, screw trying to worry about slippage, like just get out at all costs, it probably would have only been a 3 or 4K loss, right? This last attempt here to me start buying way too much here and then cutting it at the low, that was like 70% of the loss. Um, so I just got to learn to just call it quits sooner. And again, if I knew the news, if I was more meticulous in knowing the news, it would have made a big difference. And I think this is why this is such a huge hit for me this particular month. Because again, losing 18 grand isn't that big in terms of the capital I have. Right? It's not like I lost even 5% of my account, even 3%. It might have only been 2% of all capital that I have used for trading. So big picture is very small. You can't even really see it on my profit chart, but it's it's still a big deal because it was on a month like this, right? If you look, if we go back to February, this was the day I lost nearly 90 grand on MMNFF, but it still ended up being my best week ever, ironically, because it was such a forgiving market. We had so many A plus opportunities that losing that much, it was it shouldn't have happened. But again, I had so many opportunities, it cushioned that blow. Whereas in this month, yes, I closed out green, but like I mean, that's like an average loss for me, so it's not a big green week. And looking in hindsight, the overall profit, I mean, 65 grand to lose my biggest loss being 17. I mean, that's almost like 30% of this, my overall month. That's not good. Like, that's not safe. So again, it's easy to say, oh, it's good to be aggressive in more hotter markets, which in some cases it is. Certainly not as aggressive as I was on NFF, but even in a slower market, it's so much more crucial in a slower market, um, even more so than normal, to really protect what you have and protect yourself just from disasters like that. And thank God I wasn't nearly as big as I was on ENZC as I was on NNFF. That was a whole other beast that day. This was not even close to that, thankfully, but it just still shouldn't have happened. And given that we just have received less opportunities this month, it was a bigger kind of hit to me than a loss 5 times bigger, as weird as that and crazy as that sounds. So again, I just accepted that I ended up losing 5K on the day after making 13 grand in the morning. It is what it is. Much better than actually closing red on the week. Still good to be up 1,500 that week. So it happened. Just moved on from that into the next week. I kind of made it even more frustrating. Not necessarily in a sense because I had a loss, but because I missed a trade. If you watch the end of my March recap, I say at the end of this video that my goal for April is to be a little more selective, a little more efficient. Mainly because these last 3 weeks were pretty tough. It's the market slowed down, really slow down here, but it actually did pick up faster this month than it did these last 3 weeks. But going into April, I told myself, I want to be more efficient. I pretty much said I'd rather take 10 trades and make 100 grand than take 50 trades and make like 10 grand, right? The efficiency per trade, the profit per trade, I'd rather just show up one day of the month where the best setups are there and then never show up again. Now, of course, I showed up every day, but I'm really happy with how selective I was this month because, as you can see, my win rate is about like 9% or so higher. So I was much more selective on the plays that I thought were going to be working in my favor, that were going to play out better. And on the 20th was one of those days, but unfortunately, I didn't get to execute. That day was on RECAF. RECF is probably was one of the biggest runners we saw on the month of April, from nearly $3 all the way up to 8. This is on an OTC market like this. This is something I love to see, something that is really my A plus ideal setup. So again, like if you could have picked a day, if you could have picked a play that I wanted to be a part of for the month of April, this was it. This could have made my whole week. This could have made a significant portion of my month. So I wanted to be there, and I was prepared to be there. So, but then we go on the daily chart or the intraday here, I should say. Uh, what happened was I just didn't fill, and I think it was so frustrating for me because there was no lesson I could learn or take away from it. Like ENZC, yeah, I took a loss. Yeah, it was way more than it needed to be, and yeah, it during a month that I really couldn't afford to take that loss, but I could learn from it. Right, I immediately reminded myself I need to be more meticulous to look at the news. I need to remind myself no matter what you think the slippage is going to be, like just get out and look for re-enter. Don't keep just keeping a portion on because you don't want to quote unquote fall victim to the panic. With RECAF, I don't know what to learn from this. I just didn't fill. I tried so many orders, so many market makers to try to fill in this panic, and I got nothing. Now, in hindsight, should I have tried to get into this bounce? Yes, but when the red green move is all the way up in the high 60s and we're only bouncing to like 630, and again, being frustrated, missing an average that I could have been 20 cents higher or so, I was furious. I was just so angry. I told Tim this. I talked to Tim a couple days ago. He told me, he's like, I don't think I've ever seen you angry. Like you're just never an angry person. And I was like, no, I mean RACF got me pretty close to punching a wall, and I've never punched a wall. Even the thought of punching a wall has never entered my brain. But I was just so angry, I had to actually like leave my house for like 10 minutes and just stare into the sky because I was just so incredibly frustrated for the reason of like, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to get better fills in that situation? It just happens sometimes. And again, it's because it was a more crucial month, because it was a less forgiving month, that again, this was the day I wanted to show up. This was the day I wanted to really push it and make a great day. And it would have turned out great. Like if I got filled my full size where I wanted in at least the somewhat mid 60 or mid sixes, I definitely wanted to cover sub six. That was the goal. So, best case, let's say I cover like an average of like 585, average low is 560, let's just say 580s. It still would have been like a 10 grand profit, you know. Um, and did I make that on BBKCF? Did I make that on FPDM and CNC? Yes. So it's not a life changing trade. Like no trade is life changing, but just again from an ideal standpoint of how much I like this setup, I liked it a lot, and I knew it was going to be a 5-figure potential. So again, just to not fill, like that was it just added fuels to the fire or a flame or fuels to the flames of what happened the previous week with ENZC. Just two key days that really could have added. One could have saved me 20 grand, but then another could have made me 10 grand. So 30 grand kind of swing between two plays. Um, that's 50% of my month. It would have been a 90 grand month instead of 60. So just something to think about. That's how I like to look at it. That's how I like to review key crucial days, key crucial plays throughout the month. And those 2 days were crucial. Those 2 days were huge. Going into the fourth week was the second best week, but I think personally was the best traded week for me in terms of how many plays presented themselves and how I really managed them. Besides this day, I could have done a little bit better than this day, but I really, surprisingly, being my worst right day, I really wasn't mad at all. In fact, I was quite accepting of it, and I'll go into why I was. So coming into the 26th and 27th, actually the 26th set me up, or the 23rd, I should say, set me up for the 26th because that was on MMEDF. The ticker is now MNMD, but it was MMEDF because it was an OTC on the OTC exchange, obviously, and they uplisted. They put out news that they're uplisting to NASDAQ. That news came out on this day, huge gap up. And I didn't want to chase in the morning. I knew it was going to be an over the weekend play. I knew longing it into Friday over the weekend with this new spreading was going to be a great catalyst for it to run higher. Now, at some point though, it's like if I know it's a great catalyst, I know it's running higher. Like let's get in earlier. Like let's there's no FOMO to get in here because I didn't enter. But at some point it's going to start uptrending. Let's try to get a better average. And so unfortunately, I did have to leave midday, and I saw it here. I saw it in the mid 270s, 280s, and I was like, man, this is a really great spot to buy. But again, I'm not a fan of saying like hard stops. I like mental stops, and I just couldn't watch it, so I didn't take the trade. I come back, it's breaking out over 3. I'm like, okay, it's breaking over 3. Let's see if I can get a dip. As you can see here, no dip came. Finally, I just say screw it. Like this is clearly great news. It's very strong. Let's just buy over 325. I try buying, and E-Trade tells me I have no buying power. And for whatever reason, I had no idea why. And so I have to call them up, found out the reason why. Some order that I had sitting didn't like register with their software, so it gave like it sent a red flag to the company, and they just gave me no margin. Like, until you resolve this, you have no margin. So I called them. They realized what happened. I realized what happened. We fixed that issue. I then had a margin. The problem is, by the time that call was over, we were already well into the 350s here. I should say 340s. And so I was like, damn it! Like, this was the easiest 20 cents I could have just make it. I could have had a great, at least not great, but much lower 320 average, even though I should have been long from anywhere in here. So just at this point, I just feel like I'm chasing. It's like, man, I just like 2 or 3 times I could have had a lower average, and now I'm trying to get in up here. Like, this is ridiculous. But again, I just got it. I kind of gathered myself, calmed down, and was like, okay, this news is still good. I still want to long it over the weekend, regardless how much it runs. Not regardless how much it runs. If it went to like $4, I wouldn't have done it. But it started dipping back down to 330s, and it actually double bottomed here. And so at this point, I'm like, okay, this is supporting itself. Let's get long. I started longing these dips. I added a little bit more into the break over 350. It closed at like what, 350, 250, 353, and I take it long over the weekend. Come Monday morning, my goal was to sell it above 4. Turns out we end up gapping above 4, so I'm like stoked. Like, this is a great gap up. We're going to sell it at least half right out the open, and then we'll see how it goes. Sold half, and then we just start spiking. Sell 1/4, in the 450s. Hold my last fourth into the high three or into the high fours. I think I sold like 490. Just tapped 5, and then I didn't play it the rest of the day, and turned into a 12K profit. So great trade. Really, really happy. In hindsight, it makes me want to go even bigger because it was such a great catalyst over the weekend. Like, that's just so many indicators aligned really, really well with this trade to make it work really well. So in hindsight, when it worked really well, I'm like, yeah, duh, Kyle, like, you've seen this before. But again, 12K profit on the long side is a great win for me. So I couldn't have been really happier about how I still got in, even though I was, again, emotional about missing a few entries before. I still just forgot about that, fresh slate, got in and executed. So that was cool. Now, it was going to go to the NASDAQ on the 28th. So, or sorry, on the 27th. So throughout this period on the 26th still, the thoughts in my mind of taking it long overnight again and selling it on the NASDAQ exchange went through my head. Unfortunately, or actually fortunately, I know certain brokers have difficulty changing a ticker's name in the brokerage. So like, if I had bought MMEDF overnight, I was concerned that my broker at E-Trade wouldn't be able to sell me out the open on this day, right? And of course, they would be able to sell you, but I think I was afraid I was going to have to call them up and actually, like, have them execute the order for me, because they're just changing tickers. It takes some time for all the brokers to get settled, to just realize that ticker is changing. And so I was just worried that it wasn't. I didn't want to deal with it. I just didn't want to deal with the risk of not being able to sell when I wanted to sell and having to call them. And also, the third reason, or I guess second reason why I didn't want to long overnight, is because I had a feeling that this was going to be a sell the news event. Everyone who wanted to buy into the NASDAQ uplisting, most of them bought here, this day and this day. You see how big the volume is. A lot of people who wanted to get in already got in, and it's now ran from $2 up to $5 or $6. Pre-market now. We're on the NASDAQ. And again, I've seen this before. I've seen this happen where it runs up huge into the uplisting. It uplists, and then it's like, then what? Right? The catalyst that it's been going on for is here. It's happened. It's over. So when we're up 150% at this point. We're almost up 200% at this point. A sell-off's likely to happen. So that's what I did. If we go to my trades here, this ended up being a really, really great red day. Let's close this out. MNMD. So yeah, you see me short. I did miss the initial panic, but you see me short into this bounce. I was risking the high day here out the open around the 580, 570 level. So when it did bounce all the way into the 560s, I was a little bit nervous. I thought we might be breaking, and I had to cut it, but I was still convicted, so I stuck to my plan. I wasn't going to emotionally exit early, trying to save money or save a loss, because if I had, it clearly worked. So I'm glad I stuck to my plan. Panicked, added a small piece under red green, thinking he would panic more, and we actually did hold down. We halted down here. And so in my head, I'm thinking, great, this is going to be awesome. We might halt down again. Once we reopen, we actually don't halt down, and we actually start spiking. So I did cover. That's a very bullish sign to me. When you halt down, that's saying that a lot of people want out, a lot of people are selling, they're willing to get out. much, much lower, so it halts down. But then when it reopens and it doesn't halt down again or it doesn't panic hard again, it's kind of like a fake out in a way where like, oh, just kidding, we don't have that many sellers. Like there's actually enough buyers to not have it halt down or panic again. So to me, that was a sign that I definitely needed to cover. Covered some, then re-added that into this huge bounce. Covered some again into this weakness. And unfortunately, I didn't cover nearly as much as I wanted to. I probably should have covered half, if not all of it. But again, I got a little bit, I wouldn't say greedy, but I got a little bit aggressive because I was just very, very convicted it would go below $4. So the fact that we didn't go below $4, I just didn't cover it all, you know. But again, I also knew it was probably going to bounce. So I did add back, but I could have added back much more had I covered more here. But again, stayed patient. It really topped out in the 480 level there, which is really nice. We panicked even more. And unfortunately, my patience did run out. I told myself, like, wait till sub 4, wait till sub 4. And then we start really bouncing again. I'm like, you know what? I can't let myself give back profits again, or not give back profits, but let this bounce even higher than I want, like it did here, and not lock some more in. So eventually, I did end up covering it all. And 15 minutes later, it finally goes sub 4. Now, granted, it only went down to like 370, so not like a huge miss in profit. But just something to note, the fact that, like, you know, I had such conviction in going over 4, I should have like stuck to my guns in that scenario. But again, still made over $7,000 on this trade. Great win, along with all the great wins I had the one big other win I had on the front side, long 8 on that news over the weekend. So that was these 2 days here. And then going into the last 2 days, this day, the 29th and the 30th, were BPSR. If we go to the chart here, so BPSR put out some like COVID related news, but the news was like we treat 10 patients for COVID with their drug or whatever they're trying to sell or trying to make. That's great, like that's awesome, but it's 10 patients. We have how many billions and millions of people on the earth? Like that's a very microscopic start. And so, but it ran huge, and that's okay. Like I'm not going to start just shorting into random strength. Like let it run as high as it wants. Unfortunately, coming into day 2 on the 29th, I thought I was going to have a red day solely because if you look at the heart chart history, you know it's never really gotten enough steam to go multiple days. Right? We have one green day, big red day. One green day kind of gets going, ends up closing red. Another green day, big red day. So you know, just going off history, just going off what is familiar to me that the chart is showing to me, I had a feeling that it was a high odds it would go red at some point. So going into that day, I did get aggressive early. I did get aggressive right out the open because we did panic. We did pull. And so we were testing red green at 36 cents. It really looked like, I mean, they tricked me. I mean, I really thought at one point it was breaking. And so for a trader like me who wants potentially bigger size, I started getting short. I didn't want to, again, like a RECAF scenario. I didn't want to miss my fills. I said, screw it. Like, I think it's going red. Let's get short. Unfortunately, they absorbed the living hell out of me. And I immediately I could tell right when I got short, I was like, okay, they're way bigger buyers than I thought. It started spiking. I immediately covered. After some slippage, I lost like 2,500. No big deal. That's totally fine loss. The problem came in when it started fading and failing. So when it started failing here, it kind of started reminding me of, again, this day where it spiked. It went green for a decent amount of time, but then ended up closing red. So when we had that morning spike, we had that morning strength, but then we started failing. I'm like, okay, this is still going to work. This is still, you know, within my thesis. We should go red, and it's going to be a really solid trade. So I start shorting a lot in here, and we then hold, make some higher highs, and all of a sudden we start uptrending again. And so at that point, I'm like, dang it, like this thing is holding. I'm not going to let this thing go against me. I cover around like 48, and then I lose another like $6,000 or so, 5-6 grand. So I end up losing a little bit over $8,000 on this trade on the 2 attempts, and making it my biggest red day of the month. But reflecting on that trade after it happened, I wasn't really mad at all because 1, I followed my trade plan. 2, I was aggressive because I wanted to be aggressive. It wasn't just like ENZC where I just got more aggressive to try to like make more money back. No, I was aggressive because I knew the potential that this play had. And more importantly, 10 times out of 10, if a stock fails like this midday and is like right just above red green, about to go red, I'll take that trade 10 out of 10 times. The fact that it came back is like a 1-2 times out of 10 occurrences. So I'll take that trade every time because there's been plenty of times where I take this trade and it works out tremendously well. So if this is the downside of that setup, or just, you know, again, 2 times out of 10, it's gonna come back like this, so be it. I'll take that edge, I'll take that risk, and I'll just accept it. So then coming in the next day, we were gapping down, we were finally going red. That was enough for me to confirm we are having a red day. Unfortunately, again, me having bigger size, and I think maybe the case what happened with RECAF, I just didn't fill in the first panic. Really frustrating again, but I also knew, again, I learned from my mistake with RECAF. I knew the first bounce I wanted to get in. I knew this was going to go lower than this, especially like I said on the daily chart. I had big red days when it did go red. So I was like, you know what, let's get into a bounce. Started shorting in the 52s here. Ended up being right away. Added a couple pieces throughout here. Let me actually pull up my charts. So here's the red day. Like I said, immediately shorted, covered, tried a couple more times, but really sized in here, held, cut that loss. So that's that trade there, like I said. But then today, right again, missed that first panic, short the bounce, couple more adds here, and then I really timed this well. I mean, I did not know this was going to be the bottom here, but I timed it incredibly well in hindsight. I really was certain or convicted it was going to go below 40. So when it didn't go below 40 nearly as strong as I thought. And so I said, you know what, it just hit my goal. Like, it just hit below 40. Like, don't be greedy. Let's get out. And so I did it, like you said, or like you see here. I covered it most into this pull. And ironically, not actually ironically at all, this low was this support here. This 38 support ended up being the low for the day. So it makes sense. Really glad I covered. Unfortunately, didn't re-short this bounce. I kind of was pretty knocked out for the week. Being the end of the month, end of the week, I was just kind of over it. I was like, I just wanted the weekend to be here. I don't really want to care or think about trading anymore. And I was giving a live webinar at the time, so I was just kind of thinking, like, let's just take it easy. Don't need to push it. I'm kind of exhausted at this point. Hindsight, of course, this is the bounce I shoot. If I had more energy and more aggression, this is the bounce to short. It is the midday bounce. It's midday bounce pattern. If you guys know it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This was the time to short. Unfortunately, I didn't. It faded more and then actually closed near its lows, so it probably has a red day come next week. But big picture, I made $7,000. I made most of my loss back from the previous day, closing out that week $22,000, then closing out the month $65,000. So again, stepping stone month, some good plays, some bad plays, some good lessons. Again, overall, I'm glad I was more selective, higher win rate for sure. But then now, again, the next step is going forward for May, really taking care of those losses. Because again, even though I'm accepting of this loss on the 29th, this loss on the 14th was just not acceptable. That's not okay. And that's essentially why you see that my average win and average loss are pretty much the same trade, which is I don't like. I think your average win should be at least double, if not triple, your average loss. And you see that many times. Previous month 4,000 only 9 or 1,600. 6,000 4,000. That's not that great of a ratio, but 3,600 1,800. So again, 2 3 to 1 is usually what I look for. The fact that we're like 1 to 1 this month isn't that great. It makes me look profitable because I had such a good win rate, but because of the big losses I had, it really brought up my average. So going into May, like I said, still want to be selective, but then want to maybe just have a little more guard up towards losses, right? Not necessarily reduce my risk. I'm happy with the other trades, like these other losses I took, being around 1,800 here, 600 here. I'm glad with those losses. I want to keep my risk the same in those areas, but the particular trades that I am looking and do end up being more aggressive on, just want to put a couple extra like check marks up, right? Like, is this truly a play to be aggressive on? Is it a play like ENZC where I really don't want to accept that loss if it's that big? Or is it a play that I will accept that loss if it's that big, like BPSR? So again, that's the goal for May. That's pretty much it, guys. Thanks so much for watching again, and best of luck to your trading in May, and I will see you guys next time.